It's now live, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon, members, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting of the Housing and Communities Committee of the Combined Authority via the Combined Authority's website. Owing to the government guidance on social distancing, this meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the local authorities and police and crime panels coronavirus, flexibility of local authority and police and crime panel meetings, England and Wales Regulations 2020. To members of the public, if you do not want to be identifiable, please choose a pseudonym. A decision summary and minutes of the meeting will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on the meeting page of the Combined Authorities website. To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, I'd ask all members of the committee to keep their video camera switched on for the duration of the meeting and to keep their microphone muted except when I invite them to speak. Officers will join us to introduce their reports in the usual way. Any member wishing to ask questions or make a comment should indicate this by clicking the raised hand function on the right-hand side of their screen. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, ask your question, and then mute it again to allow the officer to respond. As with all new arrangements, there is always a risk that we might run into technical problems, and I'd ask for your patience if we do so. And I'd remind all members and officers that all virtual meetings will be recorded. So to start off with, members, I'll begin by calling the names of all members of the committee to establish your presence. Please confirm your presence. Councillor Steve Allen.
Attending.
Thank you. Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan Fuller.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Roger Hickford.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Sargent.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Bridget Smith.
Present.
Thank you. And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden, present. Item 1.1 on the agenda is apologies for absence and declarations of interest. To start off with, apologies for absence. The Democratic Services Officer, would you be kind enough to confirm there are no absentees today?
No absentees, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to the declarations of interest, does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? Please click the raised hand function on the right of your screen now if you wish to declare any interest. No one appears to have clicked their hand, so if any interest occurs to you during the course of the meeting, then please do ensure that you declare that at the earliest possible opportunity. Thank you very much. There will be a 5 or 10 minute comfort break at an appropriate time in this agenda due to the volume of business on the agenda. We have a total of 21 items on the agenda, and if we were to restrict ourselves to 10 minutes to each of the agenda items, we'd only finish at 5:35. So I am going to try and be as brisk as I reasonably can, while still allowing the fullest necessary debate to take place, particularly in those areas where there may be any contention. Moving on to agenda item 1.2 on pages 1 to 12 of your pack, we have the minutes of the Housing and Communities Committee meeting on the 14th of September 2020, and we're being asked to approve those minutes as a correct record. May I ask any member who does not agree with this proposal to click the raised hand function on the right of your screen now? I see no objection to the proposal to approve the minutes as a correct record, so we'll take that as carried. Agenda item 1.2 is the action log. An updated action log was included in the published papers for this meeting. If any members have any questions on the action log, would they use the raised hand function on the right of their screen now to show this? Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Chair. And it sort of was an issue that was raised at the last meeting, which was around the calculation of additionality. So we've got the, we had the paper circulated a month ago or so, was it? Which is progress. And I was interested in the viability assessment intervention in that document, which was very helpful. I just think that we probably need a bit more structure in the when we report each proposal. I know we've got words today, but I just felt that it didn't really draw specifically on the information that's in this document that was circulated on additionality. So I think, Chair, that it would be useful if we could make sure there is a structure on additionality. I know in the minutes it actually talked about the calculations. I think just saying how much per unit it's costing is not really the calculation that we were aspiring to when we discussed this at the last meeting. So perhaps, Chair, you and the officers could to make sure that we've got something which does show the calculations in a more structured way, so we can judge additionality more clearly compared with the document that we've received.
May I just get clear for my own purposes, the Councillor Sergeant, are you asking for greater clarification about whether there is additionality at all in each individual case, or on the numbers involved on additionality in each individual case?
Well, the minutes said that the officers would circulate the definition to all members and clarify, and you said, I think, and clarified that additionality calculations would be spelled out clearly in future reports. I don't think we're necessarily doing that in a structured way. I don't know what your view is on that.
Well, we do have information on the reports, but you are quite correct. It's not being done in a systematic way, in the same way on every single report, in the same place on each report. So what I will do is take this away with officers, if you don't mind, to review this for the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments on the action log? Nope. So we'll take the action log as noted. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 1.3 is public questions. Now, we've received a number of questions from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and a copy of those questions has been circulated electronically to all members of the committee, and that was done in advance of the meeting. I will read the questions, and or rather I'll ask the Democratic Services Officer to read the questions, and I'll give responses at the start of the relevant items on the agenda. Agenda item 1.4, the Housing and Communities Committee Agenda Plan. Do any committee members have any comments on the agenda plan, please? That's 1.4, pages 13 to 16. No. Oh, Councillor Sergeant, you're raising your left hand, or were you just stretching?
I always raise my left hand, Chair, as you know. Yeah, so I was at the Skills Committee this morning, and we got onto the subject of developing a tourism strategy, which was the one of the elements in the communities element of this committee. So I guess we should have a view on it if the Skills Committee and the rest of the CA are developing a tourism strategy. So I'd just like to move that one forward. You know, we have discussed communities a number of times, and it's either in our remit or not. And it sounds as though the CA is working on that. So it would be interesting to see the report at least.
I'm very keen, Councillor Sergeant, to avoid any unnecessary duplication of effort. And when we did have the conversation previously, we were aware that a lot of the work to do with the tourism agenda at the moment is really very much to do with the recovery phases that we're going to have after COVID-19. Again, I will take that away, discuss it with officers afterwards, and come back to the next meeting. But as I say, I really would not want the same reports to be coming to two different committees unnecessarily. Any other comments? Fine, then we can accept the agenda plan. Moving forward, the Combined Authority Forward Plan is on pages 17 to 54, agenda item 1.5. Any comments from any members of the committee on the Combined Authority Forward Plan in relation to this committee? No comments? Then we'll note that. Thank you very much indeed. Well, I've certainly done better than an average of 10 minutes so far on each agenda item, but now we can go into the more detailed reports on programme delivery. And first of all, we have agenda item 2.1, the £100 million affordable housing update, which we have on pages 55 to 68 of our pack. May I invite Roger Thompson to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is the usual report to each committee on the update on the 100
Sorry to interrupt. Are we doing the question, the next questions first? Sorry. We need to cover those first, Councillor Bowden. Sorry.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. I did say we'd deal with the questions at the relevant agenda item points. So before Roger starts, I wonder if you'd be kind enough, Tema, to read out on behalf of Councillor Scott, who can't be present, the questions which she has raised.
Okay, so I'll read the question, and then if Councillor Bowden will read the response, and all of the questions actually in relation to this item. So the first question is paragraph 3.1 in the report. Is the committee able to advise as to the reason for the hold-up referred to, and can the committee advise on the impact this is having and will have on the progress of the programme?
Well, BASE have advised that the reason for the delay following the review meeting held on the 8th of September 2020 is that ministers and officials are heavily focused on the COVID situation and more recently local and national lockdown arrangements. They acknowledge that this is frustrating.
Okay, the second question is paragraph 3.2 of the same report. Is the committee able to advise on the reason for the deferral of the £15 million from 2019 and the hold-up in the £30 million for this year, 2020, and the impact this is having and will have on the progress of the programme? In relation to both matters, the lack of £45 million for progressing the programme would appear to be not insubstantial, and a question arising is whether this will result in fewer than planned 2,000 houses being built within the planned period, that is to the 31st of March 2022.
Thank you. The deferral of £15 million from the financial year 2019-2020 has not been specifically reasoned to us. But our interpretation is that BASE wanted to see more progress of starts on site in order to recommend the release of monies to the Minister. The £30 million of monies for the financial year 2020-2021 is pending the outcome of the review held on the 8th of September 2020. The amount of money outstanding is substantial, and grant papers being recommended to the committee today on the 9th of November are being requested for approval subject to sufficient funding being received from BASE. We have received no indication from MHCLG that we will not receive the outstanding £45 million of funding for the remainder of our housing programme.
Okay, question 3, paragraph 5.1 of this report. Of 668 housing units begun, only 237 have been completed. What assurances have been given reliably as to the completion date of the remaining units of the 668?
Of the units started on site, the grant money is generally paid in phased payments as the houses are progressed, including a final payment only on practical completion. And the projected completion dates of all the sites are shown on Appendix 1 to the report.
Okay, question 4. When it is said that the Combined Authority is chasing those schemes and providers to deal with the pre-construction issues as quickly as possible to commence starts on site, what response have been received to date, if any, and has any assurance been given by those providers as to their start and projected finish dates?
Thank you. The responses have been received and most are updating us on approvals or technical issues. We're going to continue to communicate with providers to monitor and assess the position of when starts on site will take place. If there is a position where a start on site is delayed and will not be anticipated to take place before 31st of March 2022, the scheme will be withdrawn from the programme.
Okay, so the 5th question, paragraph 5.8, what is meant by completion in some form? That is, it is difficult to comprehend the nature of completion that is simply in some form. It is understood that completion would indicate completion as in finished.
And this is where some units in a scheme may have completed, but not all. Scheme delivery and construction programmes are normally phased, or in some cases approved schemes involve multiple sites.
Okay, paragraph 5.11, reference is made to the possibility of a further lockdown period under COVID-19. A lockdown was able to be anticipated taking into account the history of COVID-19. What steps have been taken to factor in this lockdown, and what impact will it have on the programme as a whole, including the matters referred to in relation to paragraph 5.1 to 5.8?
Current lockdowns are not meant to be affecting the construction industry, although there may be some risk to supply chains, especially if the nature of any future lockdowns becomes more comprehensive.
Okay, and then the final question, paragraph 5.21, what concrete steps are being taken to resolve the outstanding release of the 45 million of funding? And how realistic is it to assume that the 45 million will provide A, to enable completion of the programme by the expiry date, whether that date is the 31st of March 2022, or if this is not the expiry date, the set expiry date, or B, at all, question mark.
Thank you. And as advised in the responses to earlier questions, we have been in regular communication with BASE, both at officer level, chief executive level, and the Mayor is now raising this at ministerial level. We have received no indication from MHCLG that we will not receive the outstanding £45 million of funding for the remainder of our housing programme. If the expiry date is determined to be 31st March 2021 rather than 31st March 2022, then we will not achieve 2,000 units started on site.
Okay.
And that concludes the questions.
Yeah, that completes the questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed for reminding me, Tamer. It's much appreciated. Right, I will now go back to Roger and ask him to introduce this agenda item, please.
Thank you, Chair. Indeed, some of those questions probably deal with quite a bit of what was in the report as well. This is the usual report to committee. The key issue, and as identified in the questions from ONS at the moment, is obviously the BEES MHCLG review. Unfortunately, we're not able to confirm any update on the outcome of that review prior to this meeting, and hence we have the papers that are coming later for the scheme grant papers being conditional on our receiving the money that's outstanding, or at least a significant proportion thereof. In terms of the current programme, we have 39.7 million of schemes with grant approved, and we have the 40 million revolving fund schemes. All of those schemes are listed in Appendix 1 for the benefit of the committee members. In this committee, if schemes are approved through this committee later in the session, there are 13 schemes totaling approximately £19.1 million worth of grant and 453 units that we're seeking committee to approve today. Assuming that the money is realised, the focus and schemes are approved, the focus for the programme will be moving, again, as indicated in the questions from ONS, towards starts on site and the team's activity around investigating further with our partners and getting confidence around those starts on site. We are expecting to see a significant uplift in starts before end of March 2021, but we actually need to see that happen rather than people just telling us that it's going to happen. At the moment in the programme, we have two amber schemes in Appendix 1. It is probably quite probable that between this meeting and the next meeting, when you see the next summary paper, we're anticipating that those two amber schemes may well fall away from the programme. That will total approximately 100 units and about 4.3 million quid's worth of grant. These are both situations where it looks like in one situation, the applicant is going to take their money actually from Homes England because they have a framework agreement through their subsidiary Longhurst. This is Evra with Homes England, and they're likely to take their money from Homes England because they haven't drawn down on the full amount that's been reserved for them. The other situation, the site's been through numerous registered providers to see if they can make it work, and it seems unlikely at this moment in time that the scheme is going to happen to our timescales. That's not to say it might not come back in some form, but it seems unlikely, since the scheme at Whittlesford, that it's going to take place. It's because they're complicated land ownership issues and contaminated land issues there as well. And it seems as if even with our grant offer, and we've been open-minded about coming back with a variation to it, it seems unlikely that someone's going to get to deal with that site because of those complications before our deadline date. The other schemes at the moment rank green. We believe that subject to us just chivying those parties along, they should be delivering to our required timescales. We have included a new section 6, which is giving some information, basic information around the performance of the revolving fund loan book. Again, those loans can be seen in the bottom of Appendix 1 in the second tableted table of 5 loan schemes. And we supply some basic information on payments, and we'll continue to update those probably with more detail as we get into getting closer towards the repayment profile of those loans. But at the moment, there's only one loan that's meant to be repaying, which is the M&D Ely site. They made an early payment in October. There's a large payment due in December that we're monitoring. And I spoke to them the other day to try and ensure that we're going to receive that payment when it's expected. We've also provided, I think there was a request previously for some information on tenure mix across the portfolio of 1,589 units as we currently stand. That's supplied in section 5.5. The majority of our tenure mix at the moment is affordable rental units, which I think was close to 60% of the units. The second most popular, if you like, tenure is shared ownership, which is just under 40% at the moment, and there's a small percentage for social rent. So that's, I think, a summary of that paper and where we're at the moment. Of course, very happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you, that's very much appreciated. Would any members of the committee wishing to ask a question or make a comment, please make use of the raised hand function at the right of your screen. Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Chair. I think members realise that I've been concerned on progress for a long time, and this, to me, paints an even blacker picture than we've seen in the past, really. I was slightly disturbed to hear the answer to at least one of the questions from overview and scrutiny, where the fact that we've not had funding is just due to department being busy on other matters, where it quite clearly says on page 60 at 3.2 that 15 million of the monies were held back following the last year's review, which we still haven't seen. While at the same time, there was a direct payment to Cambridge City Council for their 70 million council housing programme. I note also at 3.3 on page 60 that there's no disagreement over the decision to create the 40 million revolving fund, as this was clearly permitted by the original business case. So this made me have a look at the original business case, which is actually on Department for Communities and Local Government headed paper. So it must be pretty official and should be the agreement between ourselves and the funding body. And I was very surprised that what we've been carrying out has not been in line with the business case. And, you know, I'm going to pose the question, is this the real reason that the funding's not coming through? It's wrong, I think, as has just been said, that it's just around them being too busy, because we know full well that they are concerned about Mere Fen and the legitimacy of that as one of the grants that's been made. But, you know, looking through the business case, I just want to highlight, Chair, how I don't think we've really followed through the business case. So the business case actually says it should be bringing together funding streams, and that includes growth funding, for instance. I'm not aware of that. I think we've only been using the 100 million. I'm not being aware of us actually using other funds. And it also says we should take a strategic and collective view on which developments will best serve the overall objectives of growing the economy. To me, that's not been referred to in any of the proposals that have come through to grant funding. It says we will use the assessment results to ensure that candidate sites and development proposals are the best overall fit to the strategic objectives of the area. Well, that's never in any of the reports. And it actually talks about what the assessment criteria should be. So obviously I've asked a number of times about things like additionality, but it's not being followed through what it says actually in the business case, which is around, does it fit in with the strategy? Is it following the scheme appraisal methodology? It even talks about having separate pots for site purchases, loans, viability grants, etc., which we've not done, and we haven't set up a qualification process as far as I know. It does actually say we were going to set up an investment appraisals team, which would include representatives from partner local authorities, the LEP, in an advisory capacity. It does actually clearly say that the grant drawdown will be completed by 2021, which is this coming March, I think. So I am very concerned. I mean, it also actually, of course, did talk about what the need was and identified 47% of the funding should be going to Greater Cambridge. So I am formally going to ask today for an urgent report to the committee and the board as to the gaps and differences in the current processes and approach compared with the approved business case. That business case, as I say, is on Department for Communities and Local Government headed paper. It just feels to me that we've taken a very ad hoc approach to the funding of housing in the 100 millions. We've not done what we said we would do when we kicked off this 100 million housing grant scheme. And I think this behind the scenes must be one of the issues that the government's concerned about at the moment, that we've not followed through what we said we would do, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Sargent, before I invite Roger Thompson to respond to that, I can tell you from personal experience in more than one other capacity that it is undoubtedly the case that MHCLG is having issues with dealing with queries which are going to it at the moment, and they clearly do have capacity problems themselves. So it is entirely reasonable, I think, to accept that they're not currently responding to the September meeting to us, just because they are overwhelmed by the COVID-19 and lockdown issues. And as I say, that is consistent with my experience in other areas of business, not to do with this particular committee. Roger, would you care to respond to the other comments made by Councillor Sargent?
Yeah, quite a lot of comments in there. I'll probably just pick out what I think was probably 2 or 3 of the key things. First off, in connection with our methodology in terms of the use and creation of the revolving fund, that actually is very consistent with the business case. And when you look at the strategic case in the 3rd paragraph, it's sort of quite clear that it's reflecting the fact that projects which will enable recycling of funding are being encouraged, and the ability to reuse capital to fund a continuing pipeline of development after the initial 5-year programme is all referenced in there. So I think we've been consistent in delivering that. In connection with, I think that the point about, or further point about that, if you look in I did circulate, I think on Friday morning, a copy of the minute of the meeting to members privately of the 8th September meeting, and it's very clear in that Rowena Lim is acknowledging that they have no issue with this creation of the revolving fund and the methodology that we're using to support the delivery of additional affordable housing throughout the region. Mike, I think you mentioned 47% in Greater Cambridge. Of course, that includes Cambridge City itself, where you already have 70 million of funding specifically allocated to you. And when you work that out, that's already 35% of the 170 million that you've had sort of ring-fenced. So clearly we want to do more and are doing more. And there's some papers today in South Cambridgeshire I'm sure Councillor Smith will be pleased to see that are sort of supporting affordable housing in the area around Cambridge. But those weren't hard and fast numbers either. I think this has been talked about previously at the board meeting and when we looked at the housing strategy in September 18. They were not intended to be hard and fast absolute targets. And if you look at some of the rest of the business case, there's reference in there to flexibility and sort of moving with the market as the sort of market presents itself and the way in which we deliver to this programme. This document was dated March 2017. It is now coming towards the end of its period, but obviously in our reviews with BZAM HCLG, there is reference to it. They haven't raised any issue with us about any non-performance being against the business plan, is all I can say.
Thank you, that's very helpful, Roger. Councillor Sargent did ask for something to be specifically looked at, which is the discrepancies which he feels exist between the original business case and what we have done. Would you be kind enough, please, to review the original business case and what the actual policies that we've followed since the whole programme began, and to be able to give a response in writing to members of this committee as to whether and to what extent there is any discrepancy between the original business case and what we've done since the start of the programme?
No problem at all.
That would be helpful to all members to be able to see that. Councillor Sargent, do you wish to come back fairly quickly, please?
I do actually, Chair. Thank you. I haven't got an issue with the revolving fund, you know, with one of the predecessors to the combined authority, the Cambridge Horizon, as many of us know, they've done very well in terms of the revolving fund. I would specifically like to know on the revolving fund what the attitude is of government to the fact that only 48 homes are currently programmed into the revolving fund. So are we getting the best value for money for this? But my main issue really with the business case as opposed to what we've been doing is we have not taken the strategic approach that was in the business case. And that's what I would like us to fully report on in the report that Roger Thompson's going to supply to us, because, you know, it was meant to be a strategic fund and we haven't actually followed a strategic approach to this. I mean, I didn't go into all the details, so I look forward to the report. But in effect, it said we should be striking partnerships with housing associations, with providers. And I've certainly not been aware of that. It also refers to local housing associations. And I think sometimes we've just relied on the nationals to deliver schemes. So I look forward to the report. I'm not happy with the overall report we've got today. I think we're a long way away from what we should be achieving, and unless we get more justification today, I will actually be not noting this report as giving progress. I think I would probably be voting against it because I don't think we are actually making progress at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much indeed. So I'm supportive of Councillor Sargent's concerns, and I'm pleased to hear that we're going to get a paper on it. I hope that paper will reference the paper of the 20th of March 2017, which was produced under the auspices of the portfolio holder then, who was my predecessor. And this was titled Housing, Developing Our Strategy and Affordable Housing. And I think we've lost our way in being the guardians of a strategy. I think what we've become is a grant giving body. So we're functioning a bit like the National Lottery function. We advertise grants, we say what the criteria is, we receive applications, and we make decisions about whether we're going to fund those applications. You know, there could be far greater engagement, particularly with our local authorities. I mean, I've been talking today with my lead officer who, albeit very, very supportive of the money that comes forward from the Combined Authority and about the original strategy and the original ambition, but says, my only involvement really is when the Combined Authority get approached by a registered provider seeking funding as to whether we'd be supportive of an application. So there's a real lack of engagement, in my view, might be different for other councils, but in my view, a real lack of engagement with us in the local authorities. And, you know, going back to this paper of 2017, which quite clearly identifies that this money should, you know, this considerable sum of money should be directed at the areas of greatest need based on affordability. And here it shows that there's a very useful table here, which I'm sure most of you recall, where it actually shows where the greatest challenges are as far as affordability is concerned, and that's Greater Cambridge, closely followed, but well, I think Greater Cambridge 47%, Peterborough 24%, Huntingdonshire 15%, and East Cambs and Fenland 7%. So, you know, we're not, and again, there's a table on the ratios. So I'd like, when Mr. Thompson does this work, I'd like it to reference this paper of 2017, and I'd like that paper to be shared with members who might not have been around in 2017, because it shows what the original vision is. And I think we need to be playing a more active role in shaping a strategy and working with our partners, be they local authorities, be they registered providers or community land trusts, to make sure that we are actually ensuring that this money is going where it's delivering the greatest benefits, where it's really addressing the problems and overcoming those problems of affordability and access to high quality affordable housing in the areas where it's most challenging. So I think that's a very important piece of work that we've asked for, and I hope the board's going to support that. But please, can we go back to 2017 and have a look at what the original ambition was, please?
I'm very happy to, when I provide the report, I'll append the previous reports to it, Councillor Smith, so all members can see that.
Thank you, Roger. And of course, it's not merely affordability that we need to be concerned about, but also viability. And when we have the next agenda item, or the next but one agenda item, we'll be able to see what the viability problems are as well as affordability problems. Any other members wish to make any comments or ask any questions? Councillor Smith, sorry.
Could I just come back on this question about whether, you know, what our role really is? You know, are we just, you know, I mean, what do members think? Do we see ourselves on this committee just as sign-off, rubber stamping of grants, or do we see a greater role for ourselves in shaping what goes on, that actually, in what determines what grants, what applications are actually coming forward to us? Because at the moment, I mean, I've chaired various grant-giving bodies, which were rubber stamps, and that's how it feels here. And I don't feel that's what it should be.
I think, Councillor Smith, that possibly as a result of the paper that Roger Thompson will be producing, we'll be in a stronger position to make comments about that at our next meeting. Right, Councillor Sargent, do you want to go back on something else?
I do actually, Chair. I think it's in this report. It's around the £100,000 homes, which we're obviously making progress on now. And I just wanted to pick up what we discussed last time, which was how all the people who are on our list of people interested in the £100,000 were informed this time. We were concerned that not all 2,500 people would be notified of the Fordham scheme in particular, because we thought everybody should have it, have notification, even if it's not really in their area. So can I just ask what notifications were made to everybody on the list in terms of the availability of the houses in Fordham? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure that that is exactly the tenor of the comments which were made at the meeting last time, when we did say about the appropriateness in particular of concentrating upon those in the immediate locality. But Roger, would you be able to answer the question, please?
Well, obviously there was an allocations policy that committee has approved previously. I understand that the team dealing with the 100k homes, which is led by Emily Mulvaney, applied that policy. I will get a specific answer to your question, I think, and give it back to you after the meeting.
Thank you, Roger. Right, Mike, you've suggested that you may not be happy to note this report, in which case I will ask for the recommendation, and the recommendation here is that we note the progress of the delivery of the £100 million programme. I'll actually need to put that to the vote. So I'll ask each committee member in turn if they agree with the recommendation to note this report, and please unmute your microphone to respond. Councillor Steve Allen.
Agreed.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
Happy to note.
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
For.
Councillor Roger Hickford.
Agree.
Councillor Mike Sargent.
Against.
Councillor Bridget Smith.
No,
That was a no.
that was a no.
Thank you. And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden, is yes. Democratic Services, would you confirm that is 5 votes to 2? Okay.
Correct, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Then the report is noted. Next agenda item 2.2 is the £70 million Cambridge City Council Affordable Housing Programme update. And I don't think, unless I'm told otherwise, that we have anyone present from Cambridge City to be able to assist us on this. Roger, would you be able to move us forward on this item, please?
Yeah, a very brief introduction from me, Chair, because I don't have all the detail behind the report. Obviously, again, this is the summary report for the £70 million Cambridge City component of the £170 million programme. Regrettably, I think the 2 officers at Cambridge City weren't able to be with us to give any more detail today. I think in summary is obviously that the programme is sort of moving crab-like, I guess, towards its objectives. There is a slight shortfall in the amount of money that's being asked for against what the board approved in May for the annual budget. I don't think that creates a special concern at the moment. It's partly, I think, some of the COVID delay, but it is something I think we just want to watch in terms of seeing the programme continue to progress and deliver towards what we all hope is the March 2022 target.
Thank you, Roger. Would any members of the committee wishing to ask a question or make a comment, please use the raised hand function. Councillor Sargent.
I was just interested in Roger's comment that it was moving crab-like. I don't know what he's trying to infer there. I think it is making good, steady progress and is on target to a successful completion, and houses are now being occupied. And we're also selling houses as well on at least one of the sites. So I'm not going to ask Roger to withdraw crab-like, but I don't think it's necessarily the right terminology for the progress that's being made.
Thank you for your comment, Mike. Any other comments from anyone or questions? In which case the committee is recommended to note the report on spend and outputs for the £70 million affordable housing programme, and that the next report will be provided in January 2021. I take it there is general consensus in support of that recommendation, so I propose not to take that recommendation forward to a vote, and that we agree that unanimously, unless anyone disagrees. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 2.3, which is on pages 19 to 118 of the pack, and that is the housing market dynamics across the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority Area report, which members will recall as a report I asked for quite a number of months ago, and which I believe will provide some useful insight for all members as to the different challenges which are faced in different parts of the Combined Authority area. May I ask Roger Thompson to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to make this too long because people have sort of 3-year degree courses doing this sort of stuff. Our strategy so far with the £100 million programme has really been to intervene and support locally, to support local development activity using monies across the entire Combined Authority area. Hence the variety of grant approval papers you see later today. One of the key constraints around the delivery of additional housing is development viability. And I'll draw members' attention, I think, particularly to the bullet points at the top of page 3 in section 2.4, which sort of tries to articulate some of the issues and some of the various factors that go into determining whether or not a development is going to be viable in terms of its delivery. There's a key relationship, obviously, between house prices and land values. And across our area, with the different councils, there's a mix of affordable housing policies, and they're tabulated on page 5. We also, across our area, have a variation to policy in terms of applying the nationally described space standards, and they're also referred for the benefit of members on page 6, again in a table. We have high house prices in part of our area, and it's not rocket science. It is basic, I think, economics, and that it's a demand supply equation. And you have the best chance of strategically changing that maybe in the long term through increasing supply. And obviously there's various issues that need to be sort of resolved in order to do that. Some people point solely at planning, but it's not just planning, it's also getting the development community to actually progress and build the houses that maybe have been consented. All areas across our area, from what I can see of all the data I've ever seen, have a need. It may be for different reasons, but there is a need, and we're endeavouring to work with providers to resolve those barriers to development locally and deliver the houses that people we know desperately need. So this is quite a complex area. You could get into hours of sort of technical valuation and appraisal discussion. I've tried to give a summary of it, I say particularly at the top of page 3, but probably best to open it to questions, I think, and take it from there.
Thank you very much indeed, Roger. And I thought it was a very helpful report in showing the disparate nature of the market across the whole of the combined authority area. And it's very tempting to get involved in theoretical discussions about land values in all of this. And I certainly would like to spend half an hour or more talking about land values and the appropriateness of the current system. But I think we've got to restrict ourselves to the situation that we've currently got and what we can manage to do to influence it. Councillor Sargent first, please.
Thank you, Roger. Yeah, I'm glad I liked your reference to a 3-year degree course. I think you said to fully understand this, but I'm still struggling, to be honest, because the information in your report is written in a way or put across in a way that doesn't allow me to fully analyze what is going on. I don't know if it's actually possible, but for me, what I'd like to know is, not in addition to the sale price of a house or the rental price for a house, the cost of the land for each average house, if you like, not per square meter, because I don't know how many square meters a typical house would occupy. So for a typical house, how much is the land value, how much is the building cost, and how much is its sale price / rental, if you like? Because that, to me, I know you've put in about risk and that, but that to me would determine whether 30% affordable housing or 5% or 40% would be reasonable. But at the moment, I'm not really getting an indication from this report as to the differences. I mean, to me, intuitively, if I looked at the cost of land, the cost of the sale price of housing, and the fact that Cambridge requires national space standards, and 40% affordable housing, I think, well, they were the ones that are going to get the biggest issues with delivering them. But it's entirely the opposite from what I'm being told, but there's not enough information in this report for me to really judge that. It would have been good to have some averages for an average home in each of the different districts, so we could see how narrow the gap is. I assume in Fenland, which means that you can't actually provide a high level of affordable housing. Thanks, Jen.
It's not a case, Mike, of not being able to provide a high level of affordable housing. It's a case in half of the district of Fenland of not being able to provide any affordable housing at all, and virtually no other Section 106 benefits. And I'm willing to make an offer to you to be taken up after the meeting if you'd like it. And if you'd like to contact me privately after the meeting, I'm more than happy to put you in contact with, and we can have a Zoom meeting with officers in Fenland to explain more clearly what the issues are in Fenland so far as viability is concerned, because it is such a different calculation from the one which is done in Cambridge City.
I certainly would welcome that, Chair, and perhaps we can open it up to other members of the committee who might be interested in coming along as well, because, you know, I am scratching my head at the moment.
Fine, thank you very much indeed. Roger, would you care to respond?
I appreciate the difficulty with this topic, and I would like to make an offer to members. I'd be quite happy maybe to spend a bit more time with some of this issue around understanding viability, to give us sort of maybe a 1-hour technical workshop at some point with some PowerPoint slides, which I think can bring it to life more than just a, dare I say, having written it, dull old report. I think that might be able to bring 1 or 2 real life sort of examples to bear for members to sort of assist their understanding. I'm very happy to offer that if members might be interested in that.
I think, speaking on behalf of, I see some thumbs up as well. I think that some members of the committee would find that extremely helpful. So thank you very much indeed, Roger, if you could arrange that. Yeah. Councillor Bridget Smith.
Thank you. So, Mr. Thompson, thank you. That's a good offer, but can we include the offer to our officers as well? Because I think if we're going to do that, it would be of wider interest than just to us as council leaders and members. So I just wanted to pick you up on something you said, Roger, at the beginning, where you implied that it was within the scope of the combined authority to actually increase supply enough to actually start impacting and reducing house prices. Are you serious about that?
In the medium and long term, I would love to be able to sort of find a way to do that. I mean, we have a housing shortage in significant parts of our area where there's way more demand than supply, and this is part of the issue with the dynamics of some very high prices in part of our area. Now, I'm not suggesting I want, and it wouldn't be a situation where overnight you would collapse the market by 20% by producing a flood of houses. It's an evolution rather than revolution thing, but it strikes me that as a combined authority area, I'm not sure often we actually exceed the housing numbers we're seeking to deliver. And I know we quite often blame developers for this because we say, well, you've got the consent, but you didn't build it. But you know, the only way to sort of solve the problem is to somehow try and increase that supply.
So I think so. This is well, having heard Chris Pincher talking recently, you know, it's the problem that government are battling. So I think if we've got a magic wand, we should be telling them about that. So there's a couple of other issues that have come up with me. So I'm not going to talk particularly about the paper, but you know, there are some big challenges at the moment. And certainly when I heard Chris Pincher talk a few weeks ago, he seems to think the solution to all our housing delivery problems lies with the SME market. But I was talking to an SME developer on my patch at the weekend, and he tells me that RBS, NatWest have closed their departments that give loans to people like him in order to get going with new ventures. So, you know, we're dealing with that, aren't we? We can't cure all the problems because we now have the major banks refusing to lend. And I gather that people wanting to buy, and particularly first-time buyers in very expensive areas like mine and Mite's, there are no 90% mortgages anymore. So if you are a first-time buyer and you have no access to a 90% mortgage, the odds are you aren't going to be buying a house. So, you know, the things are being stacked up against us, aren't they here? You know, we can do our bit, but if the SMEs can't borrow, and if first-time buyers can't borrow either at the rates they need, then, you know, this is just an uphill struggle. You know, how are we going to cope with these challenges as well?
Councillor Smith is absolutely right in terms of the current situation, and you know, mortgages at 85% seems to be about the best people are able to get. Now, this seems to be partly because there's a worry, certainly on behalf of the building societies, that the market may be overheating, may be the wrong word, but artificially high is probably the best description for it at the moment, and therefore they're trying to build more buffer into what might happen in the next 12, 18, 24 months in case. And there's very good news on COVID today, but in case COVID really hits the employment market, we get a wider recession that hits the property market, and we have a significant fall in values. Up to this point, that hasn't happened, and indeed it seems like the stamp duty relief programme has, in the short term, done a remarkably good job in stopping the housing market going into reverse. Looking ahead, there's one particular situation that I'm interested in that I'm trying to sort of raise with the Combined Authority, and that's the opportunity that they've had with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, where they were given a £300 million fund by Bees MHCLG, specifically to support housing and housing development in the city, in their area. And I would love to be able to find a way to progress a similar sort of deal here, where our Combined Authority could have a fund on identical terms, probably from my point of view, to what they have in Manchester. We don't want it necessarily to be any different. And that would give us an awful lot more firepower to do stuff, particularly if you're talking to these SME developers who can't borrow money at the moment. And I am sort of in some very early discussions within the Combined Authority about that, but having done some research with my team to look at what the other Combined Authorities in the country were doing and how they were approaching housing, Manchester, that scheme there was very attractive to me as your Director of Housing. Yeah, so we aren't ignoring it, and we would love to get something like that, you know, some real heavy money behind us that would mean we could start making a much bigger difference.
So I'd certainly be, you know, very, very interested in that. And, you know, in my authority, we have a particular focus on SMEs and supporting SMEs. As we say, we know that the minister, I'll get brought a cup of tea. We know the minister thinks the SMEs are the way to cure the housing market. But, you know, SMEs, these people are fighting for their lives at the moment. If we're going to put something in place, we have to make it easy. We have to make, you know, we cannot be making them jump through numerous hoops and have to employ, you know, a small army of people in order to get through our processes. We're going to have to really start engaging and doing some hand holding and having a very, very clear, easily interpreted strategy with very, very clear, definable outcomes.
I think it's difficult to disagree with some of the comments you've just made, Councillor Smith, although you have veered somewhat away from the housing market dynamics subject of this particular paper. But thank you very much indeed for your comments. Councillor Sargent.
Yeah, so we have opened it up a bit, haven't we?
So we need, unfortunately, to move forwards, unless it's something to do with this paper.
Well, let me very quickly say this, Chris, because I think it is important that let's hope we do deliver on the 5-year programme. I just wonder at what stage we'll be thinking beyond the 5 years. Cambridge City Council is doing that, and it might be a nudge to Roger that he is thinking about the wider issue of increasing the number of houses supplied in the area, in addition to any sort of grant and loans that we can make ourselves.
Well, again, that's somewhat beyond the scope of this paper, but I believe that James Palmer has very much got in mind what's going to be happening at the end of the current 5-year period and what goes into the next one. Right, moving on from that, we can move now. Oh, we are asked to just to note this report. I take it that all members are happy to note this report. The lack of opposition means I'll take that as being agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed, members. Moving on now to the £100 million affordable housing programme scheme approvals. Asma, with your agreement, I would like to start with number 5 and then move forwards from that, just to accommodate Councillor Allen, because I don't want him to miss any of the programme scheme approvals in Peterborough itself. Not that I'm expecting any of them to be particularly problematic. So if we may start with 2.45, which is on pages 153 to 160 of your pack, and that is Sandpit Road in Thorney. Asma.
Correct. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Okay, I'll start off with Sandpit Road. I'm going to make all major points very small and sweet because we've got quite a lot to get through. So I'll start off with Sandpit Road in Thorney, 5 units, shared ownership. They're asking for a grant of 237,804. The site is already on site at the moment with Larkfleet, and Halo will be taking on the properties later on. The rents are not applicable in this because there'll be shared ownership at 50%. The units are slightly smaller than the NDS standards.
But are the units within the limits of Peterborough City Council standards?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from members? In which case, may I take your lack of comment that you agree this proposal? If there is no comment, then Councillor Smith, sorry.
Sorry, so I'm really struggling here because the page numbers you've given don't tally with the page numbers I've got on the screen. So I'm just, sorry, I think it's actually, sorry, our agenda says 153, but I think it's actually 157. So I was just struggling. I just wanted to talk about the space standards, please. So I'm just trying to get up how, okay, so actually, so one of them is only 88%, is that correct? 88% and 91%?
That is correct.
So that's, you know, I bring this up every single time, and on principle, I'm not going to be supporting anything that is so wide of the mark here. You know, what COVID has done has shown us the difficulties for people who are being forced to work from home in homes that are just too small. And we've got something here that is almost 20% smaller than the recommended, well, it's 12% smaller than the recommended standards. That's really significant. And a lot of these homes are small anyway. And I really, really think that when we are reviewing our strategy, you know, we need to, and I've said this about 3 times in the past, a part of our strategy needs to be that we are delivering really high quality homes and that those homes meet up with the national standards or ideally exceed them. So, you know, 88% is not acceptable in my book. And I don't understand why we can't be having early engagement with these applicants to say to them that national space standards are really important to us. Because the pushback I had last time was, you know, it's still, you know, they get planning permission. It's not, you know, there's nothing we can do about it. But I disagree with that. You know, we are the guardians of the quality of life for the people of Cambridgeshire, and part of that is ensuring that they have spaces to live in which they can live and we now know work in as well. So I can't support this. I won't vote against it. I'll abstain on it, and I will abstain on all the ones that I feel have not gone far enough on space standards. And I shall bring this up every single time we're discussing these, and I'd like to see us starting to have early conversations with people so that, you know, the next time we meet, every single application meets these standards.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And you have said this before, as you say, and it is a subject which we have explored. And the problem that we've got is one of viability in some parts of the county. While some parts of the county, especially in the south, do have the luxury of being able to insist upon and get these standards, in other areas and in some particular sites, we just don't have that economic luxury. And it's a choice between approving sites which are approved under the standards of the individual district councils, or insisting on the national standards and getting nothing built at all. And that is the unfortunate dilemma that we in some parts of the county currently face. But I accept your point of principle that you're making, yeah. But we've got a point of practice that we'd stand to be squeezed out entirely from getting any affordable housing built whatsoever. And we're close to that point now in Fenland, it has to be said.
Yeah,
it's a real dilemma.
I know it's a real dilemma, but, you know, I also have, you know, I also have the choice about not supporting these, and and it's more than principle. I just feel that if we all get behind this, then actually the developers will start moving, because if they know they're not going to get funding unless they meet the national space standards, we're making it too easy for them.
I'm afraid what they do is they say not viable, and we end up being forced just to accept there will be no affordables whatsoever. And we're in that position time after time after time in Finland. Roger, you care to come back before I go to the next member?
Just a very brief one on this one, Chair, just to mention that this is a situation where we're converting actually market housing to affordable housing. So we haven't had, in these situations, we rarely get the opportunity early in the process to influence that. This is an opportunity that's arisen to convert market property. And occasionally we have papers like this that don't quite meet the standards. I think that's part of the reason why.
Thank you. Councillor Sargent, next, please.
Yeah, I actually started reading through the all the schemes that we've got on the table today, and the first two I was warming to the task, if you like, because we were actually getting 100%, and we were also getting air heat pumps as well. And I thought, wow, we're turning the corner here. And we have certainly got some that have achieved 100%. And I don't think it's necessarily tied to a particular district council area, and I think that comes back to my point when I asked for the review on the business case, because that did put a lot more detail into how we assess schemes that are coming forward than I think we're carrying out at the moment. So I will be very interested in looking at the differences between our current processes and what we said we were going to do when we secured the 100 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Councillor Fuller, Ryan Fuller.
Thank you, Chairman. You've said in your explanation of this, Matt, actually what I was going to say in response to Councillor Smith. And whilst she and I do more often than not, shall I say, agree on housing matters, this is something that we don't, as you've heard us say before. And as much as she and Councillor Sargent raise this every meeting, my response every meeting is pretty much the same. So I had to come in on this. And I'm delighted Councillor Smith has found a Conservative government piece of guidance that she so vehemently agrees with, that she raises at every meeting. But I think it's a distraction, frankly, Chairman, for many of the reasons that you've highlighted. And of course, you and I represent big chunks of the northern part of the county where this would have very detrimental consequences if we as a combined authority, as I've said before, were to try and impose some sort of blanket policy, a one size fits all for the whole of the county, when you and I particularly know that doesn't work. We've got big parts of Fenland land actually within the Huntingdonshire district, and it's very, very difficult there in terms of viability as well. This is only government guidance. It's not a diktat or anything. It's guidance on this, and where it works is wonderful, but in certain cases and in certain areas it just doesn't. And I think we need to be flexible enough to be able to deliver those very different circumstances in different parts of the county. We do talk about this at every meeting, Chairman. I think we did say previously we would try and do something to stop that happening. So I'd very much welcome perhaps an agreed way forward on this, rather than we keep having this debate every single Housing Committee meeting. I'm not sure what to suggest. I thought we might have managed to achieve it from Roger's previous paper, but apparently not.
There are ways of achieving it, but I'm loath to restrict the democratic right of individuals to speak, even if it's saying the same thing meeting after meeting after meeting. And I wouldn't like to go down that route, but I would look for some degree of self-control from members, that we don't say the same thing on more than one paper, at least in one individual meeting. Councillor Sargent.
You want to come to our planning committees?
No, I don't want to come to your planning committee. Thank you very much.
That's the case. But I was talking about this in the past, and obviously we talked about viability in the past, and as of yet, I'm not convinced with the viability amongst the different districts, as I said in the earlier item that we had on the agenda. I'm hoping that when we get the presentation that Roger Thompson's offered to us, that it does become clearer and I get a sudden light bulb moment, because at the moment I'm not getting it, I'm afraid. So I'll be abstaining as well.
I accept the point you're making. I accept you're speaking in good faith. Let me tell you that some of us, and I don't want to speak on behalf of others who are on this meeting, but they may well agree by nodding, some of us would give our eye teeth for the sort of problems you've got as far as housing is concerned, compared with the problems that we've got. Moving on then from this, the recommendation is to commit grant funding of £237,804 from the £100 million affordable housing programme to enable delivery of a further 5 additional shared ownership homes at Sandpit Road, Thorney, subject of course to the confirmation of release of balancing monies for the £100 million programme from BASE and MHCLG. I would ask each committee member in turn if they agree with the recommendation. So please unmute your microphone to respond. Councillor Steve Allen.
For.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
For.
Councillor Roger Hickford.
For.
Councillor Mike Sargent.
Abstain?
Councillor Bridget Smith.
Abstain.
And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden, for. I wonder if the Democratic Services Officer would agree that is 5 votes in favour and 2.
Yes, that's correct.
And 2 abstentions.
Yeah.
That is therefore passed. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to item 2.46, which is the British Sugar Way site in Oundle Road in Peterborough. And Asma, would you care to just give a brief introduction to this, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. British Sugar Way in Peterborough, 74 units, 45 will be at affordable rent, 29 are at shared ownership. It's on a disused head office site, which is a brownfield site. Cross Keys, one of our local housing associations, are asking for £3,040,000, sorry. The rents will be at LHA rates or capped. And I believe most of the site has got NDS standards. Marginally, some of them are a little bit smaller, but not many. Additionality, 74 units. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Any comments from any members? No comments. Does anyone wish me to go to a vote on this, in which case I'll be happy to do so, or can I accept this without a vote? If any member wants a vote to take place, I'm more than happy to do so. If you'd like a vote to take place, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Sargent. Then the recommendation that we have in front of us has already just been given by Asma. That is the grant funding of £3,040,000 from the £100 million affordable housing scheme to enable delivery of 45 affordable rent and 29 shared ownership homes, that's 74 homes in total, at British Sugar Way, Oundle Road, Peterborough, subject to the confirmation of the release of balancing monies for the £100 million programme from BASE and from MHCLG. Those in favour, please. I'll go through one at a time. Councillor Steve Allen.
For.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
For.
Councillor Roger Hickford.
For.
Councillor Mike Sargent.
Abstain?
Councillor Bridget Smith.
Abstain.
And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden, for. Democratic Services Officer.
Oops, that's 5 for and 2 abstentions.
That is therefore passed. Thank you very much indeed. The next item is agenda item 2.47, which is the Husk sites, garage and infill sites in Peterborough. Asma.
Thank you, Chair. Right, the Husk sites in Peterborough, 19 units in all of them are bungalows for 55 years and above. All of them will be at affordable rent at LHA rates. Cross Keys again, one of our local housing associations, asking for 665,000, and they are all NDS over and above, with the exception of 1 2-bed 3-person unit, which is just fractionally smaller.
Thank you, Asma. Any comments from any members or any questions?
Sorry, can I?
Yes, Councillor Smith.
Sorry, sorry, can I just have some clarification? So I'm on page 178. So it's got here that there's three of them that are below space.
Yeah, the 2-bed,
standards.
3
So
persons.
four altogether. So 4 units altogether are at 92.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I see the point you're making. Yes, 2 plus 1 plus 1. Yeah. Any other comments? Councillor Sargent.
Yeah, it's around this term 100% windfall site, which I must admit did mystify me at previous occasions. And I do see that it was actually in the original business case. But to most of us who certainly have served on planning committees, windfall site does have a definition by the NPPF, the National Planning Framework, and it's not what is being used necessarily on most of these schemes. I think this one actually might be a windfall site because it probably does meet the criteria, which is that it's not in the local plan.
Mhm.
But to me, the definition of a windfall site is that it's a site which has become available that wasn't allocated for housing in the local plan. So can I just ask in future, we don't use the term windfall site. I now understand what it means in these documents, but for other people who might come to our committees afresh, they wouldn't understand the terminology that we're using. They would use the terminology that's commonly understood as the definition to windfall site. Perhaps we can just come up with a different terminology so that people don't get confused in our documentation.
I'm sure that officers have heard that, and they will ensure that there is the minimum possible confusion, although adhering to national guidelines as to definitions is always a useful thing to do, but we will want to make sure that we don't have any confusion for people. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I just wanted to mention, Councillor, that these units are being produced by modular form, so they're the use of MMC.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, which many of us very much approve of, and I think Councillor Smith approves of as well, I hope. Councillor Smith.
Well, yes. So I'm really sorry. You're going to be really cross with me coming back to this. So if they're being produced modular form, why are they not conforming? Because surely it's even easier to do then. Why are they not conforming to space standards, all of them, if they're being?
I can't answer that question, I'm afraid.
Well,
I don't.
You'd like to take it away and have a conversation with these people.
I can give you an answer on that, Councillor Smith, having just visited an MMC production facility in the last few weeks, and the facilities are able to produce modular buildings at definition which is given to them by their commissioner. So if they define something which is smaller than the national guidelines, that is what will be produced. And the amount of flexibility that these MMC factories now have in the production of the units is absolutely astonishing. Right, Councillor David Ambrose-Smith.
Yes, sorry. In the report it says the new dwellings are intended to be let to over 55s. But when you look at in detail, it's asking in certain areas where there's more than one person living in the house. There's 3 people live in the house, probably 5 people live in the house on occasions. So 3 over 55s in one 3-bedroomed house and 2-bedroomed house is difficult to believe, really.
I think
would you care to respond to that, please?
Yes, with regards to older people, they usually are 2-bed, 3 persons, and they assume in most cases, and I have built a site where it's been like that 2-bedroom, 3 person. The second bedroom actually is a lot smaller. It's more for equipment and things like that, and maybe they're used for 1 person if they're sleeping in separate rooms. But in most cases, the 3rd bedroom tends to be a lot smaller because it's for equipment handling mainly.
Is that okay, David?
If I may come back, Chair, well, perhaps the terminology should be changed to 2-bedroom, 1 storeroom rather than 3 bedrooms.
I completely agree with you, Councillor.
You're writing the report, I didn't.
I know, but I mean, I'm only instructed by Cross Keys of what they're actually providing.
Thank you, Asma. Steve, before I come to Mike, Steve, I see you're quite keen to speak.
Thank you. I couldn't get my hand up for some reason. The little widget isn't working. Perhaps we should consider that with these this demographic, there's also going to be bedrooms required for carers. So I think that that would perhaps embrace that issue.
Thank you, Steve. And Mike, Councillor Sargent.
Yeah, as long as we don't end up with a government scheme which says because there's 3 bedrooms and it's under occupied, you're not going to get the housing allowance. But I think this is the scheme where they're actually building it on the foundations from the garages, which, if I'm right, so perhaps that's also a reason for the space standards. Not that I'm happy with the space standards, but I thought it was an interesting initiative to be building on current foundations, which is obviously constraining in many ways.
I thought it was interesting as well, and I assumed it was also a means of reducing cost. Could be wrong. Right. Does any member wish to have a called vote on this? If so, just indicate. We are being asked to commit grant funding of 665,000 from the 100 million affordable housing programme to enable delivery of 19 affordable rent bungalows for people over 55 at Husk sites in Peterborough, but of course subject to confirmation of the receipt of balancing monies for the £100 million programme from BASE and from MHCLG. Would any member like this to be a recorded vote, a called vote? Or are you happy to just accept this unanimously? No one's raising their hand. Fine, we'll have a called vote on this. Councillor Steve Allen.
For.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
For.
Councillor Roger Hickford.
For.
Councillor Mike Sargent.
Abstain.
Councillor Bridget Smith. You're muted, Councillor Smith.
I'll agree this one because it's specialist housing.
Thank you. And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden, for. Democratic Services Officer Tamar.
So that's 6 for and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much indeed. That is therefore passed. Moving on to item 8, which is the scheme at the Perkins Phase 2 scheme in Newark Road, Peterborough. Asma.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, the Perkins site, Phase 2, Peterborough, 96 units, 38 are at affordable rent, 58 at shared ownership. Cross Keys Homes are asking for 3,740,000 grant. The rents will be capped at local housing allowance rates. Most of the units are of NDDS standards, except for some of the 2-bed, 4-person homes. Phase 1 is currently owned by Cross Keys and is at completion point. Cross Keys have also provided some 2-bed, 3-person, 5-person wheelchair units. So they're going to accommodate people in wheelchairs. Cross Keys also want to make the site 100 affordable because at the moment, Phase 1 and Phase 2 has not been built yet. So they wanted to include it as a whole affordable site. Additionality is of 96 units. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much indeed, Asma. Any comments or questions from any members, please? Councillor Sargent first. Sorry, you're muted, Mike.
Try again. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the planning situation because I looked on the Peterborough City Council website and it's still to be determined, although the report seemed to indicate that it had been, it has got consent. And on page 186, 3.3, it says that there's going to be a deed of variation to provide 30% of affordable housing. I can find a reference to Phase 1 in this respect, but I'm just confused as to the planning situation on this because it doesn't tie in with what's on the Peterborough City Council website. Thank you.
Who would care to answer that question?
I have to admit, I'm not a planner. I did not check up on it. I did, however, speak to Cross Keys. They have said that Phase 2 has got consent. There was a deed of variation. of 30%, but they decided to go for 100% on the site.
And in your opinion, that going for 100% rather than 30% won't invalidate the planning application?
No, it shouldn't do. It shouldn't do.
Mike, are you happy with that?
Well, as I say, the it's not approved on the Peterborough site website, so I am confused, to be honest. And I mean, we have other schemes coming forward which haven't got planning approval, so I don't think it impacts the decision today. But because there's a phase 1 and phase 2, I just felt as though somebody might have cut and pasted a little bit or carried forward from a previous version. But there you go.
No.
Let's hope that's not the case, but as you say, it doesn't actually alter the validity of the application itself for the funding. Right. Would any member like this to be right? We'll have the vote called one by one. The request here is, the recommendation is to commit grant funding of £3.74 million from the £100 million affordable housing programme to enable delivery of 96 additional affordable homes with a mix of rented and shared ownership at the Perkins site phase 2 in Peterborough, again subject to confirmation of the release of balancing monies for the £100 million programme from MHCLG. Asking for the approval or otherwise, Councillor Steve Allen.
Or
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
Or
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
Or
Councillor Roger Hickford.
or
Councillor Mike Sargent.
Abstain.
Councillor Bridget Smith.
Abstain.
And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden. I'll vote in favour.
That's 5 for and 2 abstentions, Chairman.
That is therefore passed. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to the next item, which is item 9. Oh, and this is the sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say number 11 is the last one for the Peterborough area.
I know, but we're doing quite well for 4 o'clock, so I'm hoping just to carry on.
Do you want me to go back to 9 then?
otherwise, I'm afraid I would get very easily confused. I might yet confuse myself later on in the meeting, but we'll come to that.
Fair enough.
Item 9 is the old motel site at 16 North Street, Stilton. Asma?
Thank you, Chair. Right, this is a current unused motel. Sorry, not my headphones there. It's 10 units, going to be 5 shared ownership, 5 affordable rent. Cross Keys again is another local housing provider that's going to ask for grant of 420,000. The rents are going to be capped at LHA rent rates and NDS. They are all NDS Cat 2s, and 1 unit is a Cat 3 for wheelchair user.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from members? None. Right. Would any member like me to have this called out, vote person by person for voting, or are you happy that we accept this unanimously? Everyone seems happy we accept this unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. That's accepted. The next item, item 10. I'd ask Councillor Ambrose Smith tells me he has sent me an email, which unfortunately I didn't receive. Would you like this item to be left to the very end of the meeting for us to discuss separately, Councillor Ambrose Smith?
no, it's okay.
It's okay, okay. So item 10 then is again from the Affordable Housing Programme. It's the Station Road, Little Port, Ely proposal. Asma.
Thank you, Chair. Station Road, Little Port, Ely in East Cambs, 39 units on the site, 20 will be at affordable rent, 19 at shared ownership. Cross Keys again are developing the site. They're asking for a grant of 1,448,000 on a greenfield site right next to the train station. The rents will be at LHA rates, capped or of 80% of market rents, whichever is lowest. And I believe all the units are of NDS standards. The additionality is 39 units. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Any comments or questions from members? Do you mind, Mike, if I go to Councillor Ambrose Smith first, since I think he has some specific interest in what's going on in this site. Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Yes, I don't know whether you'll be able to answer this only one question. Will the Housing Association work with East Cambs District Council Housing Department when allocating the homes? Going very much to what Mike and Bridget were saying right at the beginning.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that, councillor.
Will the Housing Association work with the East Cambs District Council Housing Department when allocating the homes?
I believe so. I believe so. If you're talking about allocations, I'm assuming that East Cambs has an allocation housing policy of some sort,
Yes,
and I would assume that in all cases, Cross Keys will approach East Cambs Housing Department to ensure that the units are put through the allocations policy within East Cambs.
Can you assure me of that? Because in the paperwork, it doesn't say that at all.
I can check that for you, councillor. I'll certainly do that for you.
Without that answer, I'd have to abstain.
Fair enough.
Thank you, David. I have to say that it's been my experience that on all Cross Keys sites, they've always cooperated with the local authority and have utilised the housing. David, you're disagreeing?
I'm disagreeing, yes.
Okay.
I have spoken to Gary Norman from Cross Keys about that site in particular, and he has said that he has spoken to somebody within the housing department at East Cambs, but I can certainly clarify that for you, Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, David. Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I just want to make a general comment here, really, because this is obviously a conversion from a level of market housing. And just a sort of question perhaps to Roger Thompson, are we seeing an increasing level of market housing being converted to grant applications because of the sort of comments we had earlier on about the housing market and the difficulty in getting mortgages, etc.? And is that going to carry us through to achieving 2,000 homes?
I certainly hope and expect us to achieve our 2,000 homes, Mike. In connection with the market, to be honest, it's difficult to say. We know that the market developers' perception back in the sort of spring when COVID lockdown occurred, and I think the market developers were sort of fearing the worst slightly around what was going to happen. And I think they were expecting a general deterioration in market conditions and possibly quite a big hit. And of course, so far that hasn't happened. That might be resulting in a little more opportunity for the providers to step in and get hold of some of these sites for 100% affordable housing, which we've been very much encouraging, as you're probably noting from a number of papers of this type. Because it gives us a chance in a way to grasp opportunities that maybe otherwise we wouldn't be able to do so with our delivery partners. How long that's going to go on for, I wouldn't like to say. But there seems to have been some sort of window that we're capturing a lot of units through at the moment, and from my point of view, it's very welcome.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from members? Fine, we'll move to a vote on it. I'll ask each committee member in turn if they agree with the recommendation being to commit grant funding of £1.448 million from the £100 million Affordable Housing Programme to enable delivery of 39 affordable homes with a mix of rented and shared ownership at Station Road, Littleport, East Cambridgeshire, but again, subject to confirmation of the release of balancing monies for the £100 million programme from Bison from MHCLG. Councillor Steve Allen.
For.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
Abstain.
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
For.
Councillor Roger Hickford.
For.
Councillor Mike Sargent.
For.
Councillor Bridget Smith.
For.
And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden, for. Tamar?
That's 6 for and 1 abstention.
That is passed. Thank you very much indeed. Next item is number 11, which are the former East Anglia galvanising works in Peterborough. Asma.
Thank you, Chair. Right, the former East Anglia galvanising works, Orundle Road, forget my pronunciation, Peterborough, by Colliers, 77 units, 54 will be at affordable rent, 23 will be at shared ownership. They're requesting a grant of 3,830,725 on a current brownfield redundant site. They haven't got a housing association. They're waiting on a possibility of 2 housing associations coming forward. All the units, I've been told, will be over and above 100% of NDS standards, except for some of the 1, 2 bed, 3 persons units, which are marginally smaller, but I'm in consultation with them to increase them to a normal size. The additionality of this site would be 77 units. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Sargent first.
Sorry, Chair, it's another general point. I mean, following on the comments from Councillor Ambrose Smith, it does seem to be useful if we could actually have information in the report on the allocation policy and whether it's tied to the local council, because I'd always assumed that that was the case, but I think it would be useful if we have confirmation of the allocation policy. I must admit, on 1 or 2 of the schemes, I was slightly concerned about the fact that it said that it will either be at the local housing allowance or 80% of market rent, and it didn't actually say whichever is the lower, but one of them did say the lowest, and it, you know, I think to do our job, we do need to look at the fine detail of these things and make sure that we know that it's being delivered against our requirements, and certainly making sure that they're allocated against local housing policy, I think it is very important.
Thank you, Mike. I think that it's certainly a matter of interest to us. Whether it's a determining factor or not is a matter for the committee to decide. Roger and Asma, is there any problem with us including a statement in future reports about the housing allocation policy if it had yet been actually approved or agreed?
In most cases, Councillor, I do speak to the Housing Enabling Officer of that local authority, so they are aware of giving support to those units. I suppose there shouldn't be any issue if there is an issue regarding allocations, but most of the enabling officers, which I also meet with on a quarterly basis, discuss the situation of progress in their local authorities. So I can happily provide that information, but if they're generally in support, I'm assuming that those units do come straight to them and go through their allocations policy, but quite happy to provide something.
I must admit I had the same assumption, but it was purely an assumption. So Councillor Sargent is correct. If that assumption can be actually explicitly stated in the reports in future, I think it would be very helpful.
Fine.
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
Thank you, Chairman. I do tend to agree with Councillor Sargent to a degree, but I think it goes back to Bridget's much earlier point in this meeting about the role of this committee. And the point she used was, you know, rubber stamping grant applications and being a grant giving body, essentially. So if that's what we're doing, then I work on the assumption from the information we have that the applications before us have met our existing criteria. What concerns me, the longer I spend in these meetings, is that some members seem to have almost a side list of other criteria that they wish to apply to certain applications. And that troubles me slightly, because we can have a lot of information in front of us, but if it's not actually part of the determining factors that we're considering as a committee, we're going to have different members applying slightly different standards to each application. So I think there is a bigger debate to be had here, and I keep saying this, and nobody ever brings these issues forward in a way that we can do it. But there is a bigger debate to be had here about actually understanding, as Bridget said, the role of this committee, and then agreeing some determining factors. So it may well be the case that committee wants to apply the national space standard and we say that they all have to meet that. It may be that we will only grant to sites that are going through the local council's nomination allocations policy. I'm not getting to the rights or wrongs of any of that, but we haven't actually ever had that discussion, Chairman, or that debate. So I'd really welcome that, just so we can put this to bed and we all know what we're looking at when we're agreeing these grants. Because at the moment, I think we're all doing slightly different things, and I don't think that's a helpful approach.
think that's an extremely helpful suggestion, Ryan, and I will most certainly take that up with officers. I think that otherwise we'll be going around like a roundabout, having the same discussions, the same disagreements, the same comments made by the same individuals at every single meeting. And I think agreeing matters as a matter of policy, I think, would be the appropriate way of moving forwards. But I'll take that up with officers after the meeting. Thank you. Councillor Bridget Smith.
Thank you. So that's music to my ears, Councillor Fuller. I think it's a really good idea, and I'd like to suggest, Councillor Bowden, when you're discussing it with officers, we possibly have a strategy meeting, where we can all just get together and kind of thrash this out. So when we're having those discussions about what the standards are, can we also talk about size of schemes? So this is a really big scheme. This is 77 units, all of affordable or shared equity housing altogether. Now, does that conform with the NPPF? Because my own authority, we try not to create these kind of mono developments. That we try and get variety, so that the places we're creating are like the places that have evolved over years and years, with lots of different types of houses, different tenures, different sizes, and so on, rather than what could possibly look a bit like an estate, a small estate here. So does that comply with NPPF, which I'm not an expert on, and does this actually conform with what the local authority supports? Because again, I think that's another thing that we need to take offline and include in our discussions.
Yes, I believe that we are told that it has been agreed by Peterborough in the report. I'm pretty sure I saw that in there.
Yeah, no, that is correct, Councillor. But regards to NPFF, I can't really say, I'm not being a planner. Last time I looked at the planning PPF was a few years ago myself, but I had spoken to Anne and she has supported it in regards to Peterborough.
Thank you.
Okay, but I mean, if we could include that in our discussion about what's the optimum size, because we're not just delivering houses here, we're delivering places. And I think we mustn't lose sight of that.
Bridget, we won't be excluding anything in our discussions. That's not to say we'll agree everything that you say.
Of course we will.
But we won't exclude anything. Councillor Mike Sargent.
I think I've been on this journey for 2 years, and I think I discussed it partly with Roger 2 years ago at Overview and Scrutiny Committee, soon after he joined. But just going back to the comparison between the way we're working at the moment and what it says in the business case does actually say there's an assessment criteria for funding, which we've proposed and it's been agreed by the ministry. And it lists a whole number of things, which actually, to be fair, need to be fleshed out. But, we were on this journey back in 2017, and I just feel we've not fulfilled what we said we were going to do at the time in terms of an assessment criteria. Just to re-emphasize, it did actually also say that we would have a sort of an assessment team with representatives from the local authorities and the LEP. And I do think, we've missed a trick over the years, and yes, I'm sorry to have to keep on raising these individual issues. Councillor Fuller, if we can actually agree, and there's a checklist or however you want to describe it, then that will be great, because the officers know what they've got to provide a report against. We know what we're judging it against, and if there's any differences to our criteria, we can obviously then discuss those. But at the moment, we haven't got the criteria, so we just discuss it every time.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, that's what we should be able to move forwards on with Roger's report, and also with us considering policy matters as far as this is concerned, as policy rather than talking about individual items. So as long as we do have a broad and wide-ranging discussion about what we include, I think it's a completely legitimate way to move forwards, and potentially it should have been done some time ago, has to be said. but let's make up for lost time, and we'll do it as quickly as we can. Right, on this particular application, however, are there any further comments or questions? None further. Does anyone want me to take this to an individually recorded vote? No one indicating such. So the recommendation is that we commit grant funding of £3,830,725 from the 100 million affordable housing programme to enable delivery of 77 additional affordable homes with a mix of rented and shared ownership units at Oundle Road, Peterborough, subject to confirmation of the receipt or release of balancing monies from the £100 million programme from Bison from MHCLG. And if there is no one objecting to that, I'll take that as being agreed unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on from that to agenda item 12, which is, Bridget, it's the land east of North End in Meldreth in South Cambridgeshire. Asma, would you be kind enough to introduce this item, please?
Councillor Allen's got his hand up, Councillor Bowden.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Allen, my apologies.
My apologies that the widget isn't working with the virtual hand up. I'm about to leave the meeting, and thank you for bringing the Peterborough items forward on the agenda. I appreciate it, and thank committee members for allowing me to do that. And I'll sneak away without making further noise at some stage.
Very welcome, Steve. Thank you very much. Asma.
Right, thank you, Councillor. Right, North End, Meldreth, South Cambs, 14 units, 7 shared ownership, 7 affordable rent. The rents will be at local housing allowance rates capped or 80% of market rent, whichever is ensuring affordability. They will be all conforming to NDSS standards. The additionality is 14 units. It's a greenfield site. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Any comments or questions from members? No. May I take it then that this is agreed unanimously? Is there any member wishing to go to a recorded vote on this one? Otherwise, I'll just take it that this is accepted unanimously by the committee. The recommendation is the allocation of £630,000 of grant funding from the £100 million affordable housing programme to enable delivery of 14 additional affordable homes with a mix of rented and shared ownership at North End Meldreth, subject to confirmation, of course, of the receipt of balancing monies for the £100 million programme from Bison from MHCLG. No one against this, so I'll take that as being agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed, members. You can now move back. Have I missed one?
Yeah, 13.
Number 13. Unlucky one, that one, obviously. Number 13, thank you very much indeed, Asma. And that is, of course, the High Street Needingworth application. Apologies, Ryan. Asma, I wonder if you'd be kind enough to introduce this one, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Right, the land rear of the High Street Needingworth Hunts, 45 units, 20 at affordable rent, 25 at shared ownership. I believe it's a greenfield site. Granted, they're requesting from Cross Keys Homes is £1,775,000. The rents will be at local housing allowance rates or 80% of market rents to ensure affordability, whichever is lowest. NDSS standards. Now, all units are within HDC planning policy in relation to NDSS. Additionality is 45 units. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. And the breakdown for the NDSS standards is given in paragraph 3.5 of this report. Any comments from member? Councillor Sargent.
There was a variation in what Asma just said, actually, because she said whichever was the lowest in terms of the rent, but the document doesn't actually say that, which is, I certainly would be happy if it was the lower, but perhaps she can just tell us if whenever she's put in LHA rates or 80% of market rent rates, it always means whichever is the lower, because in some reports it does actually say whichever is the lower. In this case it doesn't, but Asma did actually say that when she made the report. So clarification, please.
Asma, are you able to clarify?
Yeah, it's whichever is the lowest to ensure affordability. That's what I've been advised.
Thank you very much.
And is it the same for all of them, Asma? Sorry.
Sorry, for all of them, for which ones? For all of the sites presented?
Where you've just said LHA rates or 80% of market rent rates,
Yeah,
can I take it that in all cases it's the lower?
yes, whichever's the lowest. Yes, councillor.
Thank you very much. No further comments or questions? Any, does anyone, well, the proposal we have in front of us, the recommendation is to commit grant funding of £1.775 million from the £100 million affordable housing programme to enable delivery of 45 additional affordable homes with a mix of rented and shared ownership homes at the land rear of the High Street, Needingworth, Huntingdonshire, again subject to confirmation of the release of balancing monies for the £100 million programme from BICE and from MHCLG. If I have no one against this and no one wanting to go to, sorry, we'll go to a vote. Fine, so Councillor Allen, if he's still here, or has he just gone?
He's just gone.
Just gone, fine. Councillor David Ambrose-Smith.
Or
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
4.
Councillor Roger Hickford.
4.
Councillor Mike Sargent.
Abstain.
Councillor Bridget Smith.
Abstain.
And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden, 4. Tamar?
So that's 4 for and 2 against.
Thank you very much. Right, we can now move back
Sorry,
to...
Mike Sargent.
Sorry,
is raising
abstain.
his hand.
Abstain, sorry, not against. Sorry,
Okay, thank you.
apologies.
Right, 1 second, my apologies. Needed to put a light on. Right. I didn't really want this meeting to go into darkness, but so be it. Agenda item 2.41, going back, is the land at the rear of 9 to 17 Hawes Lane in Wicken. If everyone's got that in their papers, that's 2.41.
Page number?
Well, the page number I've got is 119.
They're all out of sync.
I think there's been an error when we've actually produced, when the reports have been automatically produced in the pack. I've taken the page numbers from the agenda at the beginning, but obviously it's not tallied with the actual numbers at the bottom. So I'll need to go back and double check the system's working correctly.
Got it now. It's about 4 pages out.
I think there has been an update to the system we use to produce the document pack, so maybe there's an error with it. So I will go back and double check.
It's okay, as long as I've got time to get there. As long as I
Yeah.
find it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Asma, I wonder if you'd be kind enough to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Right, the Wicken site in East Cambs, 16 units, 11 will be affordable rent, 5 will be shared ownership. This is CHS, which is Cambridge Hundreds. You're doing a building on a greenbelt site. They're looking at rents at 80% of market rent or LHA rate, whichever is the lowest. All the units are NDSS standard Cat 2. They're providing air source heat pumps, a lower carbon emissions on the site, and there are 16 units in total.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Sargent.
As I said earlier on, when I started going through all the reports, we made a good start with this one, and I like the fact there's air heat pumps in it. It's a sign we're moving in the right direction. Sorry to correct you again, Asma, but I think you said Cambridge Hundreds Housing Association. I think we've got Cambridge Housing Association here, but there is also 100 Housing Association in Cambridge. I've not heard they've merged recently.
Beg your pardon. I beg your pardon, yeah.
Thank you, Asma. Any other comments or questions? Do I take it from that there is no opposition? Does anyone want to have a vote, a recorded vote on this one? will accept this one as being approved, and that is that we commit £640,000 grant funding from the £100 million affordable housing programme to enable delivery of 16 additional affordable housing units at 9 to 17 Hawes Lane, Wycombe, subject to confirmation of the receipt of balancing monies from the £100 million fund by and MHCLG. Right, so that's approved. Move on to the next item, number 2, which is Moores Meadow in Great Shelford. Asma.
Thank you, Chair. Right, Great Shelford, Moores Meadow in South Cambridgeshire. 21 units, all at affordable rent. They are asking for a grant of 1,008,000. It's on a Greenbelt site on the allotments, apparently. They are moving the allotments, however. The rents will be affordable rents or lower. The units are 100% NDSS. They're also going to be providing air source heat pumps to reduce the reliance of fossil fuels. The additionality is 21 units, and this is one of our first CLT developments, community land trusts.
Thank you very much indeed. And I must admit, I found interesting the comment that the target rents are 50% of market rent, which I found interesting. Councillor Sargent. Sorry, you're muted, Mike.
That might have been hanging from before, but yes, this is really interesting scheme, and I certainly noticed the 50%. It would be great if all the future schemes have air source heat pumps and meet NDSS, and the rents are at 50%. But I don't.
Unfortunately, Mike, we don't live in a perfect world.
Indeed.
Absolutely. I take it that there's no opposition to this. If anyone wants to have a vote on it, please do indicate. Just raise your hand. Take it, Mike, you've still left your hand up accidentally. Right. So no one in opposition to this at all. So we are being asked to commit grant funding of £1,008,000 from the £100 million affordable housing programme to enable delivery of 21 affordable rented additional units at Moores Meadow, Great Shelford, subject to confirmation of the receipt of balancing monies for the £100 million programme from BASE and from MHCLG. And I take it that we agree that unanimously. Yep, that is agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on from that, we have agenda item 2.43. Oh, and that's the All Angels Park Highfields Caldecott scheme. Asma.
Thank you, Chair. This is All Angels Park, Highfields and Caldecott, South Cambs. This is a 10-year conversion of all market units to shared ownership. 5 of the units will be converted to shared ownership. Purchasers will be required to acquire 50% of the initial shares. They are marginally smaller than NDSS. Halo is asking for a grant of 247,999. The additionality is 5 units. They're already on site at the moment.
Thank you very much. I must admit I'm a tiny bit puzzled, and probably Councillor Smith can help me. This has presumably, obviously, got planning permission from South Cambridgeshire.
Yes.
At lower than the
Yeah, which is why I shall be abstaining on the grounds of consistency here. So in fact, I have instructed my officers today for earlier engagement with applicants to make sure that I'm not put in this position again, because I'm not best pleased about it.
Sorry, I wasn't getting at you, Councillor Smith. It was my lack of understanding. I thought it was policy in South Cambridgeshire that you didn't accept any applications which were below 100%.
Well, obviously it's not, is it? So, but I shall, I shall be doing exactly what I've been doing the rest of the day.
I have to admit, Great Shelford was a recent planning application. On my understanding, All Angels is a little bit older, so therefore it may have been out of that remit. But I do know that Great Shelford was very, very recent, and that's why you've got your 100% NDSS on that one.
Thank you. Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Asma.
I'm sure Councillor Smith and myself will be working hard to make sure that national space standards are in our joint local plan that we're developing at the moment.
Thank you. I will, and no further comments or questions. Clearly, I will need to take a vote on this. So the proposal is that we commit grant funding of £247,999 from the £100 million affordable housing programme to enable delivery of an additional 5 shared ownership homes at all Angels Park, Highfields, Caldecott, subject, of course, to the confirmation of release of the balancing monies for the £100 million programme from BICE and from MHCLG. May I ask the following councillors if they're in favour of this proposal? Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
For.
Councillor Roger Hickford.
For.
Councillor Mike Sargent.
Abstain.
Councillor Bridget Smith.
Abstain.
And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden, for. Tamar?
That's 4 and 2 abstentions.
Thank you very much indeed. That is passed. Moving on to number 4, which, if I've not lost track, may be the final one for us to consider. And that is Springfield Avenue March in Fenland, leaving the best till last. Asma.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Springfield Avenue in March, Fenland, 32 units, all at affordable rent. They're asking, and I think it's Claragon, asking for £1,560,000 grant. They have a previous application earlier last year where they were agreed £440,000 for social rent, but they're deciding to turn the whole site to affordable rent because it's feasible. They were speaking with your housing department and they were told through collaboration that the whole site would be better off affordable because there is no appetite for shared ownership in the area. So the rents will be at 80% of market rents or LHA rates, whichever is the lowest. I believe all the units will be at 100% NDSS, and there will be additionality of 32 units. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Mike, you've got in first before I even asked. Mike.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's an interesting question here because this is in Finland. They have achieved 100% of NDSS, and I look forward to our future discussions on that. And this might be an interesting case study compared with some of the other ones in Finland. Just a question, really, because LHA is at an elevated rate at the moment because of COVID. What would be the position if it drops back to its more normal rate in terms of this group of applications that we've been considering today? Because obviously it could end up, if we're not careful, being more expensive than LH.
My understanding from members of the Housing Board, which we meet on a Friday, which is all the local authorities, including myself, is we all believe that they're not intending to go down, but I'm not completely convinced of that. So I can't really be completely sure, but that was my understanding. We are all aware that there is a possibility that the units will go down in rates, but we've been told that that's not likely to happen. I can't be too sure.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from anyone? Does anyone wish for this to be voted on individually, or is everyone, if anyone wishes this to be voted on individually, please raise their hand. And Mike, I assume your virtual hand is up accidentally. Good. Okay, then the proposal that we have in front of us is for a further grant funding of £1.56 million from the 100 million affordable housing programme to enable delivery of an additional 32 affordable rented homes at Springfield Avenue March, again subject to confirmation of the receipt of balancing monies for the £100 million programme from Bison from MHCLG. And as far as I can see, everyone is happy to approve this, so I'll take that as being approved unanimously. Thank you very much indeed, members. And unless officers tell me otherwise, I believe that we've now concluded all of the items in the agenda and the meeting can now be closed. The next committee meeting is due to take place on the 11th of January 2021, and the arrangements for that meeting will be confirmed nearer to the time in the light of the emerging situation, but I assume it's going to be by Zoom again. Thank you very much indeed, members. Thank you, officers, and well done for managing to have the self-control to keep the meeting just to 2 hours and 9 minutes with so many items on the agenda. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair.
Well done. Thanks, everyone.